The corridor did not welcome. It processed. Light fell in clean, uninterrupted lines from recessed panels above, flattening everything it touched. Color was reduced to function: white, gray, muted black. Even the air felt filtered of personality. Shoes struck the polished floor in measured rhythm, each step softened just enough to suggest control, not silence. Nothing here was accidental. Not the spacing of the doors. Not the angle of the glass. Not the absence of sound. At the entrance, a narrow gate stood beneath a panel of opaque glass. One by one, they approached it. Badges came first. Clipped to chest pockets, to belts, to reinforced fabric that carried years of field abrasion. Each badge carried a name, a clearance level, a small strip of embedded circuitry. They swayed as their wearers walked, small arcs of motion, repetitive, almost hypnotic. Authority made visible. Authority made portable. A hand would rise. The badge would meet the scanner. A muted tone. A green light. Permission granted. No one spoke. 13 of them passed through. Their differences were immediate, though never stated. It lived in posture. In how they carried the rifle cases. In how their eyes moved, or didn't. One held his shoulders square, rigid with procedural certainty. Another rolled tension through his neck, recalculating, already adjusting for variables not yet presented. A third moved slower than the rest, not cautious, but deliberate, as if time itself could be negotiated. The corridor accepted them all the same. Glass walls ran along both sides, stretching farther than seemed necessary. Frosted in places, transparent in others. Behind them, movement existed only as suggestion, figures reduced to silhouettes, gestures fractured by reflection. Observers, watching without being seen. Or perhaps being seen only in distortion. The badges swayed. They entered the main chamber without announcement. The space opened suddenly, wide and controlled, its scale concealed until the last moment. The far wall was not a wall at all, but an engineered horizon, a controlled aperture that framed distance with clinical precision. 4,000 meters stretched beyond it, compressed by optics, flattened by calculation. The target itself was almost theoretical at that range. A point defined more by data than sight. No one reacted to the distance. Not visibly. A single table stood to one side. Equipment laid out with exact spacing. Instruments aligned as if measured down to the millimeter. No clutter. No redundancy. Each object had already justified its existence. Behind another layer of glass, higher now, the observers waited. Rows of seating. Consoles dimly lit. Faces still obscured, replaced by reflections of the room they monitored. Their presence was undeniable, but impersonal. Oversight without identity. A voice came through, flattened by speakers embedded in the ceiling. The parameters remain unchanged. No elaboration. None required. The first sniper stepped forward. His badge swung once, then settled against his chest as he lowered himself into position. Movements were economical, rehearsed to the point of invisibility. The rifle came together in segments, metal joining metal with soft, deliberate clicks. Adjustments followed. Elevation. Windage. Micro-corrections layered upon calculations already made before arrival. He did not look at the others. He did not look at the glass. He looked at the distance. Breathing slowed. Shoulders dropped. The world reduced itself to a narrow corridor between eye and target. The shot broke clean. The sound did not echo. It was absorbed, flattened, contained within the architecture. A delay followed, long enough to measure the distance not in meters, but in absence. Then the data returned. No one reacted. The sniper remained in position for a moment longer, as if the outcome might revise itself. It did not. He disengaged with the same precision he had begun. The rifle came apart. The badge swayed again as he stood. He stepped back into line. The second moved forward. His preparation differed. Slightly faster. Slightly more fluid. Adjustments made not from fixed reference points, but from ongoing interpretation. He compensated aggressively: wind, temperature, curvature. Variables stacked upon variables until the act itself became an equation in motion. He fired. The delay returned. Miss. A fraction wider this time. He exhaled. Not frustration, not surprise. Recognition. Then he stepped away. The third did not begin immediately. He waited. Hands resting lightly on the rifle, eyes narrowed not in focus, but in hesitation. He watched the environment as if it might reveal something withheld. The air currents. The minute shifts in light. The possibility of a perfect alignment. It did not arrive. He adjusted. Paused again. Adjusted once more. The badge at his chest moved with each breath, a small, persistent reminder of presence. Finally, he fired. Mississippi silence followed, heavier now. Not because of the outcome, but because of its repetition. One by one, they stepped forward. One trusted doctrine completely, every movement mirrored from training manuals refined over decades. His shot landed with mechanical precision. Still a miss. Another recalculated constantly, never settling into stillness. His shot drifted beyond correction. Another executed flawlessly, technically beyond reproach. The result did not change. The system held. Behind the glass, the observers did not move. No notes were visibly taken. No adjustments suggested. The process unfolded without interference, as if the outcome had already been accounted for. And at the far edge of the room, near the threshold where corridor met chamber, he stood. Unannounced. His badge hung lower than the others, clipped to worn fabric that had softened over time. It moved differently, less controlled, more natural, responding not to posture but to motion unrestrained by performance. He had not approached the table. He had not assembled a rifle. He watched. The corridor did not change, but something in it resisted now. The same light fell in the same measured lines. The same glass held its careful balance between exposure and concealment. Badges still swayed as bodies moved through space. Yet the rhythm had lost its neutrality. Each step carried residue from the chamber. Each motion remembered the misses. Doors opened without sound. Closed without emphasis. The facility continued to function. It simply did not acknowledge what it had witnessed. The briefing room was longer than necessary. A single table stretched across its center, dark, polished, reflecting the overhead lights in elongated streaks. Chairs lined both sides, identical in shape, uniform in spacing. Precision imposed on seating, as if alignment alone could enforce order. At each place, a glass of water waited. Untouched. Clear, still, catching the light but never breaking it. They took their seats without instruction. Badges settled against the table edges or hung just above them, suspended between identity and surface. Some men placed their hands flat against the table immediately. Others folded them. One kept his fingers curled, resting lightly, as if prepared to move again. No one drank. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then voices began, not as statements, but as adjustments. Atmospheric drift exceeded projections. Minor calibration offsets. Data latency on wind modeling. Words arranged themselves carefully, avoiding weight. Each sentence curved around the obvious, bending away from conclusion. No one said it. No one said failure. The language held. It insulated. Across the table, one of the snipers leaned forward slightly, shoulders tightening under controlled restraint. The range was outside operational parameters. Not an excuse. A repositioning. Another voice, quieter, but sharper. Parameters were defined before arrival. Silence followed, not disagreement, but recognition of a boundary crossed. The tension did not escalate. It compressed. Pressed downward into posture, into stillness. A hand moved. Flat against the table. Fingers spread. Held there longer than necessary. Control made visible. Behind the glass, the observers watched. The lighting was dimmer here, softer, but no less deliberate. Consoles glowed faintly, casting low reflections across faces that still refused clarity. Movement remained minimal. Heads inclined slightly. Shoulders shifted almost imperceptibly. They did not intervene. They did not correct. They recorded. And in recording, they preserved the structure that had produced the outcome. Requests began to surface. Measured. Framed within acceptable language. Environmental data requires reassessment. Instrument recalibration is recommended. Extended observation window may yield improved conditions. Each request was precise, justified, technically sound. Each one implied the same thing without stating it. Something was wrong. The responses came slower. Not refusals. Not approvals. Deferrals. We will review. Data integrity remains within acceptable thresholds. Current parameters stand. The system did not deny the possibility of error. It simply refused to locate it within itself. Chairs shifted slightly. Not enough to disrupt alignment. Just enough to reveal strain beneath it. One sat a fraction too far from the table now. Another leaned back, creating a gap where none had existed before. Small misalignments. Quiet deviations. The room absorbed them. He remained near the wall. Not seated. Not participating. His badge hung lower still, the fabric beneath it creased from movement not governed by protocol. It swayed once as he adjusted his stance, then came to rest against his chest. He watched the table. Not the speakers. The hands. The glasses. The spaces between words. An official noticed. It was subtle, a shift in attention, a slight narrowing of posture directed toward the periphery. The kind of movement that acknowledged presence without granting it importance. You haven't logged an attempt. The voice carried across the room without rising. All eyes did not turn. But awareness did. He did not move immediately. The badge remained still. I haven't been asked. No emphasis. No challenge. Just a statement placed carefully into the space. It settled there. Unanswered. The official held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then looked away. Not dismissal. Not acceptance. Something in between. A choice deferred. The room returned to its previous configuration. But not fully. Something had shifted. The discussion resumed. More precise now. More structured. As if tightening language could restore authority. Repetition under current variables may produce convergence. Statistical deviation remains within projected bounds. Operator variability should be minimized. Operator variability. The phrase lingered. Not directed. Not assigned. But present. One of the snipers straightened slightly, his hand pressing harder into the table. The glass before him trembled, not visibly, but enough to disturb the reflection of light within it. He did not notice, or chose not to. The air thickened, not physically, but perceptually. Breathing felt measured now, not natural. Movements carried awareness of being observed, not just by those behind the glass, but by each other. Performance had shifted. It was no longer about execution. It was about position. No one wanted to be the point of failure. So failure became ambient, distributed, unclaimed. The shooting range remained visible through a distant corridor of glass. A long, narrow line of sight. Empty now. Waiting. It resembled a stage after performance, props still in place, lighting unchanged, but purpose suspended. No one looked at it directly. Not for long. The distance had not changed. Only its meaning had. He remained where he was. Unmoved by the language. Unmoved by the adjustments. His stillness began to register, not as absence, but as contrast. Where others filled space with explanation, he left it empty. Where others recalibrated, he observed. Silence, in him, was not passive. The chamber was ready before anyone entered it. It had not changed. It did not need to. Light fell in the same controlled lines. The aperture at the far end still held the distance in its fixed, clinical frame. 4,000 meters remained 4,000 meters, unmoved by discussion, untouched by interpretation. Only the air felt different. Not heavier. Occupied. They returned in fragments. Not as a unit now, but as individuals reassembling under obligation. Shoes struck the floor with less certainty. Badges swayed again, but without rhythm, shorter arcs, interrupted motion, as if even gravity had begun to hesitate. No one spoke. The table remained set to the side. Instruments aligned. Data preserved. Nothing had been disturbed since the last attempt. Nothing had been corrected. Behind the glass, the observers had resumed their positions. Their silhouettes were sharper now, defined by a slightly harsher backlight. The consoles glowed brighter. Not enough to reveal faces, but enough to outline posture, forward-leaning, attentive, waiting. Waiting for repetition. Waiting for the system to validate itself. No one approached the firing line. Not at first. The distance remained untouched, stretching outward with quiet indifference. The target existed somewhere within it, unseen, but still defined, still measurable. The absence of action became its own presence. Time extended, then held. He moved without announcement. No signal preceded him. No instruction followed. The shift was so slight it resisted immediate recognition, one figure separating from stillness, crossing the space others had avoided. No one stopped him. That was the permission. His badge swung once as he walked, lower than the rest, tracing a quiet arc against worn fabric. It caught the light briefly, then disappeared back into shadow. He did not look at the observers. He did not look at the others. He stepped into position as if the space had always been his. The rifle was already there. He did not assemble it piece by piece. Did not adjust it in visible increments. His hands moved with familiarity, not calculation, touch confirming what did not need to be redefined. Minimal correction. Minimal intrusion. The system had spent hours refining variables. He reduced them to presence. He lowered himself. The floor met him without sound. The rifle settled into alignment not through force, but through acceptance of position. No tension. No visible strain. His breathing began to shape the room. Not loudly, but definitively. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. The rhythm did not compete with the environment. It replaced it. Behind the glass, something shifted. Not movement. Attention. The silhouettes leaned forward, slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough to alter the balance between observer and subject. The glass still separated them. Still concealed. But it no longer protected. They were watching now. Fully. He did not rush. He did not wait. Time ceased to function as measurement. There was no anticipation. No visible calculation of wind, drift, rotation. The factors remained, but they were no longer negotiated individually. They existed as a whole, absorbed, not analyzed. His finger rested. Not tense. Not prepared. Simply present. The room held its breath. Not metaphorically. Physically. Every body aligned to stillness, as if movement itself might disrupt what was about to occur. Even the subtle sway of badges diminished, settling against fabric in suspended quiet. The longest pause. Not because of delay. Because of certainty. The shot came without announcement. A single break. Clean. Contained. The sound did not expand. It collapsed into the architecture, absorbed by design, reduced to function. Then, distance took over. The chamber waited. The delay stretched farther than before, not in time, but in awareness. 4,000 meters unfolded in silence, carrying consequence without sound. Then the return. Confirmation. Impact. No one moved. Not immediately. The result did not produce reaction. It resisted it, as if the system required a moment to recognize what it had not authorized. He remained in position for a fraction longer, not verifying, not questioning. Then he lowered the rifle. The motion was identical to every other withdrawal that had come before. But this time, it ended differently. He stood. The badge moved again, one small swing, catching the light, then settling back into place. The same motion as before. The same object. Not the same meaning. At his feet, the casing rested on the polished floor. Still. Unremarkable. One small artifact. It carried more weight than all 13 attempts that had preceded it. Behind the glass, the observers did not speak. But something had shifted irreversibly. Their reflections began to surface, faint at first, then clearer as they leaned closer to the barrier that separated them. The chamber no longer filled the glass entirely. It shared space now with those who had watched it. For the first time, they could see themselves within it. He stepped back from the line. No acknowledgement given. None requested. His posture remained unchanged, not elevated, not diminished. The act had not altered him. It had revealed everything else. The voice came late. From behind. Measured, controlled, but unable to fully conceal what had entered the room. How did you account for the variables? The question moved through the space carefully, as if avoiding contact with what had already occurred. He did not turn immediately. The badge rested against his chest, still. I didn't. No elaboration. No correction. The answer remained where it was placed. Silence followed. Not the same silence as before. This one held recognition. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Recognition of a boundary crossed, not by defiance, but by clarity. The room did not respond. Because it could not. To respond would require admission. To admit would require change. And change was not part of its design. The chamber remained intact. The lights did not shift. The distance did not shorten. Everything remained exactly as it had been, except for the truth now present within it. He walked back toward the corridor. Each step measured, not performed, simply carried forward. The badge resumed its quiet rhythm, swinging lightly with movement, same arc, same motion, now unobserved by most. Or perhaps observed differently. Behind the glass, the observers began to move. Subtle at first. Hands reaching for consoles. Data being gathered. Language preparing itself. The report would be written. Carefully. It would describe conditions. It would contextualize outcomes. It would assign structure to what had occurred. Credit would be distributed. Adjusted. Positioned within acceptable frameworks. But the casing remained on the floor. Unmoved. A single point of fact. The corridor received him again. Light unchanged. Glass unchanged. The system continued. Operational. Stable. Unquestioned in appearance. From a distance, nothing had happened. No disruption. No visible fracture. Only a sequence completed. Up close, something had ended. Not loudly. Not publicly. But definitively. The system had not produced the result. It had not guided it. It had not understood it. It had witnessed it. And in that witnessing, revealed its limit.